Hvala režisu. Nastavljamo dalje sa programom. Dakle, još jedan kolega koji nam dolazi iz Francuske, Jullien Le Roux, izdvajanje na izvoru za cirkularnost nutrijenata i ponovnu upotrebu u poljoprivredi je predavanje o kojem će nam pričati. Jullien, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dragana. Good morning, everyone. My presentation has a topic that is a bit different from the others because I won't be talking about sludge, but more about urine and source separation of urine for even higher circularity of nutrients and their potential reuse in agriculture. So as you may know, I won't go into much details about this, but nitrogen and phosphorus cycles are modified nowadays, and it's been identified as one of the planetary boundaries that have been transgressed because we modified the natural cycles of these nutrients. Thanks mostly to the Haber-Bosch process, because we extract nitrogen from the atmosphere and mixing with methane from natural gas, we produce chemical fertilizers that are then used for to grow crops and animals and to get our intake of nitrogen and proteins, which is about 5 kilograms of nitrogen per year per person. And it's been more than a revolution because with this process around the 20th century, the production of nitrogen and fertilizers has been increasing a lot, and it's been very related to the increase of the world population in this century too. And it's identified also as a very different era of human population called Anthropocene. Okay, why is this problem? Why is the nitrogen cycle a crazy cycle? Because of this process, we use chemical fertilizers, and it's going to agriculture and then to wastewater, and especially in wastewater treatment plants. We try to remove nitrogen, and we finally get a bit of nitrogen going to sludges, but it's mostly, when it's well treated, it's mostly going back to the atmosphere. And so that's quite a problem because it's also producing some N2O, and because also it's very energy intensive. So we consume energy both to produce the fertilizers, and at the end in wastewater plants, we again consume energy to remove nitrogen. So it's not very efficient. And we consume a lot of methanol also to make this process working. For wastewater plants that are not working very well, we are facing a new problem. Another problem is that nitrogen is going directly to the rivers, and it's causing this problem of algae named eutrophication. And it's been a big problem in France for quite a long time, especially in Brittany, in the west part of France. You can see that it's facing a lot of nitrogen inputs because mostly of animal production in this part. And every year there's a lot of algae development in the beaches on this west coast, and it's you can see that it's causing sometimes a few problems for animals living there, and also for people. There have been people, not many, but 1 or 2 people that died because of their exposure to gas produced by algae. So it's a big problem in France. And you know that the regulations in Europe and in France have been implemented to try to avoid this problem. So again, this urban wastewater directive from Europe was adopted in France, and the most recent decree organizing all the water treatment in France is from 2015. And it's been also modified to some extent in 2020. And it's imposing to French wastewater treatment plants the minimum levels of treatment and also deadlines for their conformity, depending on the size of the city and also if they are in sensitive areas. So this notion of sensitive area is very related to the potential eutrophication of these areas. And it's been very it's been evolving a lot in the last years. So you can see here that sensitive areas were only 45% of France in surface before the 2000 years. And in 2006, it increased to about 69% on this map. And nowadays, the last map I could get is 2020. Most of France is now in sensitive area, and especially the north part. And in the south, it depends. It's sometimes sensitive, but only to phosphorus, or only to nitrogen. Yeah, it depends. But most of France is now in sensitive areas. So to try to protect our rivers, many wastewater treatment plants have been built. Regis said that we have now 22,000 plants, and you can see here the increase of plants around the years. Most of them have been built after the European regulation and French regulation around the 2000 years. And the first one was the Paris wastewater treatment plants built in 1940. And the thing is, if we look at the Paris region, the wastewater volume production has been increased along the years, and the treatment capacities of all the treatment plants that have been built along the years is always trying to catch up the wastewater volume produced. But these days we are quite okay with the volume we receive because it's quite stabilized. If we look at the conformity of wastewater treatment plants right now, it's for main plants in main cities higher than 2,000 inhabitants. They are mostly efficient with good performances. 81% of them are conform to the regulations, but that means also that almost 20% are not complying with the treatment efficiency, especially for nitrogen and phosphorus. So there's still quite a lot of efforts to do about this. And also another problem is that 2 to 3% of treatment plants have to be replaced and renovated because of their insufficient capacity, because the volumes increased and they are not able to treat all the volumes they receive. So that means a lot of treatment plants, actually, it's around 50 to 100 each year. In France, we have a large public database of treatment plants efficiencies that is freely available on the internet. And we have a colleague working on data from these plants. And in this graph, he tried to show the evolution of nitrogen removal in the main region in France. You can see 6 main regions. And depending on the region, the efficiency of nitrogen removal is very different. If you are in the south of France, where there's less sensitive areas, you see the average is around 60% of removal. And for northern parts of France, the removal efficiency is more is higher because of the sensitive areas, and it reaches 80%. So the average, if you consider all of the regions, is around 70%. Based on this, we can try to do a budget of nitrogen, and Georgia Kirkes showed this on Wednesday. You can see the budget of nitrogen in the whole country. If we estimate that there's, as I said, around 5 kilograms of nitrogen per person per year, it's going to the sanitation system. And then with the efficiency of treatment, most of it is removed and it's going back to the atmosphere, as I said. So 50% is going to the air. But that means also that the rest is going mostly to water and causing, again, algae development. And also, if we consider sludge, so compost and spreading, as Regis said, it's around 10% that is recycled in the agriculture cycle. So we wondered, our colleague working on this, it's a PhD student, Thomas, he asked, what is the potential of this whole nitrogen present in human excretions to fertilize soils, crops in France? So he worked on this data, but not only in France, but also in the whole world. And he found data from the FAO, which shows the nitrogen inputs on crops in all countries in the world. So on this graph, you can see all the inputs of nitrogen in the different countries. So that's the bars. And the red dots are the excretions, the nitrogen produced by people. And it's mostly the same in all countries. It's around 5 kilograms of nitrogen. And we can see here that in many mostly developed countries, there's a very big difference between what is produced by people and the nitrogen input on crops. Especially here, you can see Canada or even France, we have a lot of inputs. If we look at France, there's a lot of inputs of nitrogen and also potassium and phosphorus, but nitrogen mostly has been evolving along the years, and what was mostly produced in France, in yellow here, has been replaced by imported fertilizer. And nowadays, in these years, it's nitrogen that is put in crops is mostly imported in the country. So it's not produced in the country. So how could we replace this? By what is produced by people. So in this case, with urine produced by people, it's estimated that here on the right, you can see the percentage of nitrogen that could be used from urine to replace the production, what is used actually on crops. So you see that for, again, because there's a big difference between excretion and the needs in mineral fertilizers. For the developed countries, it represents only 5 to 15% of what is needed for developing crops. So in France, it's around 15. And if we take the whole picture in the world, it's only 25%. So urine is not a very high source of nitrogen because we use a lot of mineral fertilizer. But still, in some countries, in Africa and Asia, you can see that they could replace most of their needs by using urine from their population. And in most countries, it's an average, it's between 20 to 40%. The thing is also that most nitrogen is used for animal production, especially in rich countries. Here it's mostly on the bottom of the graph. You can see Australia, USA, and even France. Most of the nitrogen is used to grow to grow meat in the end, and not and to a smaller extent vegetable production. And in some other countries, it's the reverse. For example, in Africa, most of their nitrogen is going to vegetable production. So that's something we could maybe leverage. You can see here on this graph the protein consumption. So there's the example of France, but most of industrialized countries have a high intake of proteins, which are above the recommendations from the World Health Organizations. And also most of these proteins on the second graph here shows that it's mostly animal proteins. So we could maybe reduce all of this to reduce the problem of nitrogen. So again, if we look back at how we could use urine to replace some of the mineral fertilizers, our colleague tried to work on where we could use urine to replace mineral fertilizer. If we look at the whole map of France, there's around 2,000 kilotons of nitrogen used in mineral fertilization. You see in yellow the most important part where we apply mostly mineral fertilizers. Where and how could we substitute this with human nitrogen excretion with urine? And it's only a small part. Again, it's only 300 kilotons of nitrogen per year. So he looked at where people are located, actually in the cities. So that's where we could get most of our nitrogen from urine. And he tried to apply an algorithm to show where we could substitute mineral fertilizers by urine actually, on the neighboring farms and parcels. And he found an interesting result. It's that actually most of the nitrogen produced in cities could be spreaded at distances less than 10 kilometers. So there's potential to use all the urine produced in cities. So that's a good point. But the thing is how can we get urine from the cities to use in the plants and in farms around the cities? So we have another colleague working on a project to optimize the recovery of urine in the cities. So he tries to identify the largest deposits of urine in cities. And actually, we don't need to recover from every buildings, you know. We could identify the main building releasing most of the nitrogen, and he showed that most of the nitrogen is coming from offices, from collective buildings, from theaters, from schools. And if you recover this, it's enough to get most of the nitrogen produced by the city. And he also tries to apply life cycle assessment to assess the impacts of recovery of this nitrogen and cycle. So we have some examples in France. Right now it's not a lot, but we still have projects of urine separation and use in agriculture. Most of them are in the region of Paris. We have also quite a lot of examples in Switzerland. And our research group is very involved in publishing guides and favoring this project in relation with farmers. So we publish a lot of guides to help them to know that it's a possibility to spread urine and also to get new equipment for this kind of fertilizer. I'll just go into a few examples in France. So in Paris, we had this big project going on of a new neighborhood that is being built where the urine will be separated. It's around 600 apartments, and urine will be concentrated, nitrified, and distilled to get this concentrated urine. You can see this product. It's actually a Swiss company producing this process, and most of it will be used for green spaces in Paris. The thing is, okay, it's easy to use it near the production, so inside the city, but what if we want to go further? We have to build a whole infrastructure to take urine and put it into the farms further. And the thing is that when you concentrate urine, it's a very energy consuming process because you have to use distillation to concentrate it. So we are working on a new project, a new process to concentrate urine with a different process, a lower tech concentration with a freezing concentration that is lower in energy. And so this is a low-tech process with nitrification and freeze concentration, and then we will compare this fertilizer with other fertilizers, more traditional fertilizers. And it's actually a process that is being sold by an American company, US company. Okay, so as a conclusion, we have seen that 10% of nitrogen from wastewater plants is reused in agriculture, and so there's 90% potential that we could use from urine. And most of it could be spreaded by a distance of only 10 kilometers, so it's really feasible in France, around Paris especially. But we have the need for low-tech concentration systems like I've shown just before. And also, as a reminder, some moderation on the meat consumption to reduce our nitrogen intake and needs. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jullien. It was a very nice presentation. Hopefully, we will not need long time.